the League of Women Voters. Our National League president sent us an email today saying, as League members who participate in rallies, wear your League t-shirts and carry your League signs and wear your pins. So a couple of us are doing that. Can you see mine?
Yes, we can see it.
Me?
Yes.
Okay. Great. Well, you'll see on the map that we have 20 leagues. Well, you can't see that we have 20 leagues. We have 49 counties and 20 leagues in those counties. So today you will hear from action chairs from 4 of those. And they're from the eastern part of the state, the western, the southern. Some are from large leagues and some are from small leagues. And yesterday we heard from the National League leaders. This afternoon was a very informative session about state advocacy. And this evening you will hear from the local league action or advocacy chairs. Your local league where you live, you may identify with what you hear today as they describe their size, where they're located, and their challenges. And then at the end, you'll have an opportunity to have them answer your questions. So we'll start with Chris Bardill, Yakima. Chris.
Hello, everybody. I'm the president of the Yakima League and the de facto advocacy chair. We're quite a small league at 44 members, and probably a third of our league are stalwart supporters, but have really aged out of much activity. But we are celebrating our 50th anniversary this year, and that's been something we were going to make more fuss about this spring, but with the epidemic, that's some of that's been curtailed. But a recent advocacy effort we took on was to support the 2020 census in our county. The League is a member of the local coalition El Censo 2020, which is focused on people particularly at risk of being undercounted, including low-income residents and the homeless and communities of color and undocumented residents. One challenge for us is making sure people can access the online census, as our county has a high poverty rate as well as a large homeless population and many, many low-income agricultural worker households that lack access to the internet or computers. And another challenge locally is to counter the fear that sharing information online could lead to problems later on, especially for those who aren't US citizens or documented immigrants. So El Census 2020 is focused on addressing the above challenges, and we developed a plan for a different population with their help and assistance focused on the elderly. We originally planned to do outreach to retirement, assisted living, and care facilities across the county to foster staff and residents' awareness of the need for residents to complete the census. We hope to talk with staff and management and to table in lobbies or social areas. We also plan to table at our local senior citizen center, the Harmon Center. And these efforts, frankly, felt like a good fit for our league of mostly older white women. Tabling was providing written handouts from the Census Bureau, and general information as well on our league. At the Harmon Center, we were not to be helping people complete their census, but could direct them to the on-site computer lab where staff could provide assistance. So we started the second week of March to table at the Harmon Center in Yakima, and were shortly shut down by the corona epidemic. We had not yet started visitations to senior congregate facilities. So our efforts and plans came to a standstill. Then in mid-April, our local Censo 2020 group made us aware of free Census 2020 street banners available through the census coordinator, Lisa McLean, at the State Office of Financial Management. And on the slide that's up, Lisa's contact information is there, and that will be, you can jot it down now or it will be available afterwards in the slides and the wrap-up online. We contacted the city of Yakima and received approval for a downtown banner for 4 weeks at $100 a week. The city required that the installation be done by a licensed sign manufacturer, which we arranged with a local sign company, who is charging us $150 for installation and removal. So the total cost to this project is $550. We are fortunate in Yakima League to have a large Ed Fund grant made to us by the family of a deceased longtime member. So we're able to cover these expenses. However, I'm confident we could have raised the funds to do this locally if we needed to, as the census is so widely supported by the business well, the full community, I think. I believe the 2020 Census Office at the state still has banners or can print more. And since the census has been extended to October 31, I encourage local leagues to consider this a relatively easy project, helping remind local residents of the importance of completing their census. We're very pleased to have our banner hanging across Yakima to the main street through downtown. We also hope to reach activities in census participation by our older population as Yakima County moves through the phases of opening up. However, we don't know when this will happen because we're not doing very well getting out of phase 1, but hope that given the census extension to October 31st, we will still have time to make an impact. Thank you.
Well, that's how they do it in Yakima. Thank you, Chris. And Chris also put this in a twill this week in League. And that's another wonderful way to get out to our whole state membership, what's going on in the different leagues. Thanks again. So let's hear from Heather Kelly.
Hello. I will give Cynthia a minute to pull up the PowerPoint. I'm Heather Kelly. I'm the Action Chair for Seattle-King County and second Vice President. Because we're such a large county, we have and a large league, we have about 600 members. Our approach to action is always in flux. We are always looking to refine it and make it more efficient. There's just never an end to what we're doing.
Excuse me, may we see her picture?
Yeah, can I highlight myself? I'll, there we go. So the primary responsibility of the Action Chair, as we conceive of that role, is to coordinate action taken by our league based on established positions, obviously county, state, or national, and initiated by our committees, units, or board members. And I just want to pause here because I know that not all leagues have units, so I just kind of wanted to explain for King County what that means. Because our county is so large and spread out, we have members grouped by geography so that they have a local group that they can meet with without having to travel several hours just to see other people in our community. So we have 13 units and they're spread out all over the county. And obviously each city and municipality faces its own challenges as far as, issues that they need support with. And while most of the issues that we wind up advocating for are here in Seattle, just because I think that units operate pretty autonomously and do a lot of advocacy on their own. We do offer, we do educate our units about how to do their advocacy, in line with this role, and also, of course, make sure that they feel supported to get it right so that the league is speaking with one voice. The action chair also screens the issues brought to her to identify relevant league positions, and then presents the action item to the board for discussion and strategizing. And that's something that is kind of like a best practices part of my role description, but we have found increasingly that the need to stay nimble and flexible is really important. And so in between board meetings, the board will convene informally, or sometimes the executive committee will convene to decide when it's appropriate to take action on an urgent issue that really requires a response as quickly as possible. Next slide. So the action portfolio duties, this description has been something that I have rewritten to conform to what it is that I actually do, because that's evolved, I think, from how the action portfolio used to be when things were less social media driven, etc. So just to update, this is sort of our updated version of it. And obviously the foundation of all of our advocacy is in our positions. So familiarizing myself with those was kind of the first order of business. And then communicating with the state action liaison on issues for local action. That's another way that I get a lot of inspiration about what kind of action I could be taking. Supporting League of Washington action workshops, which I encourage you all to attend. They are wonderful events where you really get inspired to step fully into your role as an advocate. And obviously publishing our stance on issues with letters to the editor. An example of that this last year was actually in collaboration with League of Washington's Kirsten Mueller, who does a lot of election security research and advocacy. And we wrote into the Seattle Times, co-signing a letter to the editor, expressing our opposition to the decision to take the conservation district vote virtual. They allowed, for the first time in King County, online voting for an actual official election. So we coordinated with Kirsten to get that letter out quickly. And then after we do any kind of advocacy, our goal is always to publish anything written in the Voter so our members are aware of what we're doing. And then I'm also in charge of tracking potential ballot measures to see if they're appropriate for our endorsement or opposition, and then actively seeking out opportunities for local action and creating monthly action alerts for our members. So it's a pretty busy job, but I enjoy it. Next slide. And I'm taking on a couple additional responsibilities this coming year, but I'm also getting a co-chair. So working together, we're going to be overseeing our Observer Corps, which is a group of volunteers that go out to observe any kind of governmental agency proceeding and report back just about their impressions and sort of the overall agenda that was discussed. And then we're also going to be basically doing volunteer coordination for our local league, separate from voter services. A lot of our volunteers help get out the vote, obviously, and ours would be more issue oriented. So next slide. This is how I elicit action requests from our members. It's going to be something new that I'm rolling out in the fall when we formally convene again as a league. And the idea behind this is not to create a barrier for our members, but to get support with action, but really to help involve them more on the front end with educating themselves about our positions and determining for themselves when it's really appropriate for us to be involved in advocacy. A lot of our advocacy requests actually come from our committees. We have a really active education committee. We had a homelessness study committee just publish a study update. And so those folks really know our positions well and the issues that they are sort of subject matter experts in. But this is my attempt to get our other members kind of more engaged in understanding our positions. And so they submit this form, and then we'll work together to determine whether action is appropriate and what kind of action to take. Next slide. And this is a really complicated slide that I think has summarized a bunch of things I've already said, and I know I'm short on time. But this is kind of the sort of the roadmap to how I get action ideas and inspiration. It's from our committees and units, from other board members and individual members, because not all our members are in units. A lot of members just sort of tune in as ad hoc as it works for them. Prior action, obviously, anytime we've expressed an opinion or taken a stance on something that is in the media again, that's always a good time for us to pipe up again. Or, if things are moving too slowly on an issue that we feel is really important, that's a time that we can say this needs to be addressed with a little more urgency. And then obviously King County elections, like I said, that's a website that I try to stay tuned to get sort of ahead of things on the ballot issues that are coming up. Then I take all of those action ideas and convey them back out to our members. So I sort of convert them into an action step and then communicate them back to our unit chair, who distributes action alerts to the units. We do action alerts in our voter, and then we send an action alert email to the entire membership. Next slide. That's it for me.
Thank you, Heather. You have special challenges with such a large league and all those units. And what impresses me is your action alert, which is a full page, and your full page in your Seattle King County voter. And it's a way to get everyone involved, even though they're all over the county and in all the units. So thanks a lot.
Joan, you're muted.
Did anybody hear what I said?
No.
Oh, okay. Now we'll hear from Aruna Bhuta from the county next to Idaho, from Spokane. Aruna.
Good evening. I am Aruna Bhuta from Spokane League of Women Voters. I was recently appointed to the local league liaison position. So I'm relatively new compared to Heather, so please bear with me. In addition to civic education, voter registration, ballot party, and participation in census, there are certain local issues that Spokane League is addressing, and I'll try my best to convey that to you. Spokane has a water issue committee, which is just getting into motion. And with a little Spokane River flow issue, and we have a new chair for this committee, and with environmental policy background, so we look forward to some active participation in water issues of Spokane area. Other three committees are very closely related: homelessness, affordable housing, and criminal justice reform. And homelessness committee has, met with the homelessness, with the stakeholders in the community to kind of study the issue, and also has participated in point and time count that is conducted by HUD, Housing and Urban Development, the walk for homeless march that daily women take from their shelter to the daily activity center, and also to discuss, with various shelters to understand the issues and the needs and resources of the homeless women. Also, they participated in the resource fair Homeless Connect, which provided meals, access to food bank, health services, veterinary services, as well as legal support to the homeless individuals, so that they can get the help from prosecutors, the public defenders, judges, etc., to get their legal issues straightened out without being afraid of any untoward action toward them. They've also met with our Spokane City Council president, and also City Council member who has been pretty active in the homeless issue of Spokane. And also they were trying to get some information from homelessness management information system administrator just in February, and the plans were to get the info in March, but because of the COVID-19, that information has been on hold. At least we don't have the necessary information. Homeless committee will focus on advocating for the programs for food and shelter in short term, and also the programs that assist individuals to transition to temporary and ultimately permanent housing. And also at least in one of the candidate forums, we had learned 80% of the people who are homeless deal with the issues of mental health needs and substance use disorder. Washington Department of Commerce has reported shortage of affordable housing in upward of 220,000 units in 2018. And increasing homelessness is due to the wages not keeping pace with the housing costs, either for purchase or for the rental. And also to the public school data estimates around 39,000 students experiences homelessness. If we can keep renters from getting evicted with adequate supports and maintain safe and secure, stable housing, it'll positively impact children's development and learning by improving the physical and psychological well-being of the parents. Affordable Housing Committee, based on the research and study, plans to submit a letter endorsing action to codify just cause eviction in City of Spokane ordinance relating to tenant-landlord due process, which is going to be heard in City Council on 13th of July. Affordable Housing Committee will continue to partner with Spokane City and County stakeholders, advocating for practices and policies which stabilize affordable, safe, secure rental properties by promoting establishment of landlord registry with business licensing, code enforcement, and mitigation of landlord-tenant issue through ombudsman. The third committee is Criminal Justice Committee, and that will review the success of alternatives to imprisonment and rehabilitation. Spokane has therapeutic court for mental health court and drug court, and already they are serving 100 individuals in a non-adversarial team approach and a judicially enforced treatment program. This committee's work is going to be crucial as new jail ballot measure will be on special election ballot in February 2021. Spokane League is part of this coalition of Smart Justice Spokane Coalition, and Smart Justice Coalition is working together with 30 other supporting organizations to end mass incarceration and eliminate racial disparities in local criminal justice system. The coalition is in process of brainstorming communication strategy and political strategy for their opposition to the jail ballot, and possibly coming up with alternatives to that. Thank you for giving me a chance to present the issues of the Spokane League.
Well, thank you very much. Since I grew up in Spokane, I'm particularly interested in what you're doing. All over our country for 100 years, women, men have been working for good government and voting rights. So that's what people do together in local action rather than alone. Now we're going to hear from Kate Lunsford.
Hello everybody. Thanks for being here tonight. I wanted to give you an overview of how the role of Action Chair has evolved in Snohomish County League in recent times. Of course, the first thing that has to happen is to say yes. We currently have 162 league members in Snohomish County. We have 8 active committees and many exuberant, capable activists. In 2018, our president, Karen Madsen, asked me to be the Action Chair, and I finally said yes. I will give it a shot, which really meant, I don't know what I'm doing. Thank you for your confidence in me, and I will do my best. Slide, please. I was appointed to the board as Action Chair, and over the next few months, the board developed a policy to respond to members calling for action on league issues. It's only 1 page. If you're interested, I'd be happy to send it to you. Next slide. We wanted to have a conduit for members to take action. Actions we've considered have stemmed from our daily lives. We read about or see an issue and we ask ourselves, slide, is the government being responsive to the will of the people? Next slide, yeah, that one, thank you. Is it being responsive to the will of the people? Is it maintaining an equitable and flexible system to respond to this problem? Next slide. We've taken 41 actions since 2018. Half were issues particular to Snohomish County, 17 were statewide, and 5 were national. Next, please. The Action Chair assists members in aligning action to league positions, and I agree with Heather that it's useful to encourage members to look for lead positions on their own, to get to know impact of on issues and the program in action and their own lead positions to better understand our organization. Sometimes an action takes several alignments. An environmental group, FutureWise, asked League of Women Voters of Snohomish County to sign a letter to Puget Sound Regional Council opposing Vision 2050 Amendment X1. The proposed amendment reduces the population allocations for core cities and towns and doubles the population allocation for rural Snohomish County. There were 3 points in the letter opposing PSRC's plan to increase the population in rural Snohomish County. Here's a summary. The draft letter says more rural commuters will also generate more greenhouse gases and more traffic. This will require more roads and highways and will make it difficult, if not impossible, to meet our greenhouse gas reductions goals while increasing burdens on taxpayers who fund the wider roads. So we looked at our local league and the Washington Program in Action and the League of Women Voters US impact on issues. And for this issue, we found several positions in Program of Action. There was support from Transportation and Air Quality. The cost-benefit analysis should include transportation demand management strategies, as well as financial incentives and disincentive programs that reduce solo trips and encourage transit and other transportation options. state transportation policy should promote development in centers, manage and reduce single occupant vehicle use on highway facilities, and shift solo trips to alternative modes. And the air quality position supported coordinated action by all levels of government to control, limit, and reduce air pollution. Next slide. The other points in the letter League supported were in Amendment X will continue the destruction of Chinook habitat. And we found support in the League, supported Southern Resident Orca Task Force convened by the governor, and 5 bills that the League was supporting in the legislature. The letter also says, some argue the amendment is necessary to address existing rural lots. However, as the Growth Management Hearings Board held, the county cannot base its future planning for new growth on past development practices if those practices, as here, do not comply with the GMA. What was once permissible is no longer so. The GMA was passed to stop repeating past mistakes in the future. Program in Action describes a very similar campaign in 1995 on page 26. Next slide. Another issue in 2018 was the Everett Districting Group asked League of Women Voters of Snohomish County support to gather signatures to change the form of government in Everett. The City Council was represented by all at-large members rather than members from particular areas of the city. League members stood at many locations over the year gathering signatures necessary to get it on the ballot. It took 2 years, but Everett Districting's efforts were finally successful. We can't support every issue. In 2016, many of us supported the initiative 732 carbon tax to apply a tax on energy-derived coal, oil, and gas. We had the author of the bill, actually, Yoram Bauman, as our keynote speaker for our annual birthday party. And I think on that very same date, the League of Women Voters of Washington determined that it would take no position on the initiative. And at that point, we were not able to advocate for it. During this pandemic, we also considered commenting on the declaration by a public official that he would not enforce the governor's stay-at-home order. The Snohomish County prosecutor responded to the official saying, quote, "Put simply, we are elected to serve under the laws, not to act above them. An earnest desire to change the law is much different than refusing to enforce it," unquote. I went to our state league team issue chairs for input. I'm grateful to Lobby Team Chair Ann Murphy and President Lunell Hode for taking the time to consider this issue, as they found that it did not directly relate to positions we have studied and accepted by consensus. We are not able to advise our membership on the issue. This, as we've mentioned, is the way that we protect the credibility of the league. Next slide. Next, we need to compose a comment or a plan of action and get approval from the president. Slide. Next one, please. The process aims to make consideration of action clear, so the president doesn't need to do research to make a determination. Along with the comment and the league positions, we bring background information from other trusted sources to support the request. Credible science, scholars, partner organizations like AAUW or Communities of Color Coalition, among others. Next slide. Then we spread the word through our communication team. This may be through the voter, an email blast to our membership, our webpage, Facebook, Twitter, and the news media when appropriate. Who needs to hear the message? We have a member volunteer for each of these outlets who determines when it's appropriate for their media. Next slide. Depending on the action, the message may ask members to co-sponsor an event. Next slide. show up at a rally or march and wear your league pin or t-shirt? Next slide. Or educate the public on an issue. Next slide, please. Or make a point. The comment can be used in contact with elected officials or government agency quoting the comment from League, or quoted in letters to the editor. Next slide. In addition to action, we try to educate members on how to navigate government. We promote the Washington League's excellent legislative newsletter during the legislative session. A few of us were meeting weekly to discuss legislation during the session using the newsletter to follow bills. We practice how to use ledge.wa.gov webpage. Next slide. Next slide, please, Cynthia. We aspire to be a connection to partner organizations calling for action. This is part of our diversity, equity, and inclusion effort. We're working to develop trusted relationships with other efforts in Snohomish County. Next slide. Thanks.
I think it would be wonderful if we would give our 4 speakers and their leagues our appreciation. So everybody, thank you very much. Kate mentioned issue chairs, lobby team issue chairs, and most of your leagues probably have committees. So at lwvwa.org under advocacy is a list of the lobby team issue chairs, and they would love to be a resource for you. They have said to me they would love to, and you can call on them. And the different areas are education, gun safety, healthcare, including behavioral health and reproductive rights, climate change, energy, forests and rivers, water, criminal justice, economic and social justice, housing and homelessness, revenue, and transportation. And Kate mentioned how she's already working with some of them. Now, Cynthia, thank you so much for running the PowerPoints. And Deanne Klein will now lead us through some of the questions and comments for the speakers.
Hey, thank you. So the first question is for Chris. And the question is, aren't senior centers and nursing homes may I unmute again? Aren't senior citizens and nursing homes considered to be, and it's in quotes, group quarter, not as an individual household?
My understanding is that nursing homes where people are in 24-hour-a-day care, the nursing home has the responsibility to make sure that they are counted in the census. In assisted living or retirement centers where people have their own living space and come to meals, maybe part-time, maybe all the time, get help with medications or housekeeping services, but they're living semi-independently, that those are considered households and they need to, excuse me, complete their own census. But I can't say that I'm absolutely confident of the particulars of that and where the dividing line is.
Okay, and then a comment to you, Chris. It says, it amazes me that a city would not co-sponsor a census banner because so much of their funding is dependent on the census number.
And we had an in-depth conversation, our leadership team, about asking them to underwrite it. But our feeling was, because it was clear from what was coming out in the local paper and at city council meetings, that our city is really struggling financially as a result of the pandemic. And we decided, since we had this funding, generous grant to our ed fund, that we would not ask them to underwrite it, that we could pay for it ourselves. But I certainly, if for anybody is considering moving ahead with a possibility of a banner, I wouldn't discourage you from asking your city to underwrite some of the cost or all of the cost of that, because obviously the city's well profit from good census, a good strong census that counts everybody in their area.
The next question is for Heather, and it's a question, two questions actually, related to online voting. Did the league oppose online voting? And then the comment that online voting is very hackable.
Yes, we opposed online voting for that very reason. So the King County Conservation District, I think, was like identified as an easy guinea pig because I don't know why. Obviously, from the league standpoint, every election is equally important as far as whether it should be a secure election or not, regardless of the nature of the department or agency, that people are running for. So, and we were also concerned that this would be the beginning of a larger movement towards online voting. So yeah, our positions are pretty unequivocal, and Kirsten Mueller has done a lot of work to educate throughout Washington state about the risks of online voting. So we were, that was an easy letter to the editor to write.
Okay, and then another question for you, Heather. Do you get feedback on when people respond to action alerts, and what percentage of membership responds?
Oh, hang on, I went away.
There you are.
So the action request form, the action alerts. So
Action alerts.
That's a great question. Sometimes it's really obvious because the action alert requests that members come to a hearing, and I am always there. So when we had partnered with another organization fighting for campaign finance reform, and I need to give them a plug right now, Fix Democracy Now, I believe, was the name, Fix Democracy First. We partnered with them to get what was originally one ordinance that was split into 3 ordinances passed Seattle City Council to make our elections, I don't know why that keeps happening, sorry. Make our election funding more transparent here in Seattle. And so the action alert was show up to the city council hearing and give public comment in favor of the ordinance. And we had 15 people show up in the rain, of course, because it's Seattle. So that felt like the action alert that was asking the most of our members. And then, other alerts ask for, people to contact their electeds or to send postcards or to consider, some other kind of action in between on the spectrum. But I kind of feel like the best measure of how effective they are is when you ask for the most and people come through. So they're pretty new. We've only been doing them for a few months, but so far so good.
And then we have a person with their hand up. So Lynn, again, I'm going to unmute you and let you ask your question.
Well, I didn't want to ask a question. Our count from Spokane County here, I have talked with Vicki Dalton, and she has said that the only people that will be able to do online voting are people in the military that are stationed out of state. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Oh, thank you. So another question about action committees. If a committee is trying to obtain information and perspective on an issue that they're in the process of studying to move to a league study, is it necessary to obtain approval of Action Share for their efforts? And I think that goes to Heather again.
Okay, so if you're trying to generate interest around an issue to undertake a study, that does not need my approval. Our studies are member driven and very much right now kind of languishing. Unfortunately, we haven't had a lot of studies. And I think part of that actually, even though that sounds dire, is because we have so many, we have robust positions at the state and national level to draw from. So we're actually kind of in this interesting place where on a lot of issues we're kind of plateauing, because national, I don't know if anyone here was on the call or on the Zoom yesterday with the litigation folks from National, but you know, they write, National writes its positions to be quite general and allow for as much advocacy as possible. So, you know, there's less need for studies, but it's interesting because of a lot of the structure of how the league conducts its business throughout the year is driven by sort of studies and positions and consideration of new positions, because that's how our, in King County, that's how our forum schedule is set. So we've been eager to have people take on new studies.
Okay, and then here's just a comment that Secretary of State Wyman is pushing to have a secure voting system for the military to get away from the risks of normal online voting. So looks like they're just trying to address that. I did have a question here for Snohomish County. I'd like to learn more about how the Snohomish League's listening session with the community was set up.
Well, that was presented by, it was coordinated by our diversity outreach committee. So they have undertaken a very ambitious objective to help get the community to trust us enough to want to invite us in, rather than us saying, well, we'd like to come and do something for you. We are hoping, our diversity outreach committee is working on developing that kind of trust that will hopefully engender interest in what we do and how we can help the community that we live in.
Thank you. And just a couple of comments. The League of Women Voters Washington does get information on responses to action alerts, and it's a very low percentage. There are state action alerts, but also local league action alerts. And Heather, I have another question for you. I'd like to hear more about using the action request form. How is it used to recruit volunteers?
Well, actually, that still falls to me. So I wish there was a form that would magically recruit volunteers for me. I haven't written that form yet. So the action request form is actually just meant to be sort of a direct line to me for our members. When they spot something in their community that is of concern or interest, and they want the league to speak out, it's just a way for them to let me know about it. But we don't have an action committee in Seattle-King County. I am that committee. So I really need to be judicious about what requests I will be taking, and which are really urgent and which can be kind of postponed, etc. So this is something new that as I mentioned, we'll just be rolling this out kind of in the fall when the league comes back together. So I will let you know how it goes, hopefully. Maybe if council invites me back, I can update you.
Okay, and then someone would like to know where to get the handouts from each of the speakers. Maybe Amy, do you want to take that one?
I can take that one. This is
Okay, Cynthia, okay.
posted on the website. So when you go to the council website, for each session, there's a link to the PowerPoint, and then there's a link to any handouts. And anything that wasn't submitted, if you make a request to the speaker involved, they will probably send it to you.
Okay. And I think this refers again to action alerts. It's a comment that says, sometimes what is needed is member understanding of the current situation and connecting that to the action item. And I think that's all of our questions.
I want to clarify lobby team liaison, which was explained in our last session, and action or advocacy chair, which is this session. In many cases, it's the same person. The action person during the legislature can get involved in assisting the lobby team. In other, maybe larger leagues, it would be separate people or separate even committees. If you want to get involved in action, tell your local league president. You might be just the person she or he is looking for to assist or to take on becoming action chair. Yesterday, a national radio personality said something like, what we need is a League of Women Voters to do such and such. And because we are political, environmental, and wanting equal opportunity for all people, the vote, civics education, good sex education, good history and science, the League is the place for us. So thank you all for being part of this session. And we thank you especially to Chris Bardill of Yakima, Heather Kelly of Seattle-King County, Aruna Butta of Spokane area, and Kate Lunsford of Snohomish County, and to Cynthia Stewart and Deanne Klein. So we'll see you Sunday at 3, where there are 6 sessions from which to choose in what we call the marketplace of ideas. Till then.
All right.
Thank you, everybody.